replay. This will all be part of the replay. So where are you located? Oh, you're on the Pacific time zone. So you're on the West
Yeah.
Coast? Yeah.
Mhm,
California?
mhm. No, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, you're in Portland. Okay, I was there in 2019. Yeah, stayed there for one night. Interesting place. Good energy. You've been there a long time?
Um,
Uh oh. She just got removed. Well, anytime we have tech difficulties, we always have a good show. Here she comes. All right. Boom. Uh oh. Okay. Okay. Something's going on here. Well, let's see. Got 11 people in the house having tech difficulties. See if she pops back in. Hmm. Let's try this. Very strange. On. All right, let's try. I might have to reboot. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, here she comes. All right, let's see how this works. Okay, we're back in business. Anytime we have technical difficulties, we always have a great show. So now there's 24 people in the house. There's plenty of people here. 2 minute mark. Amber
great.
Ontiveros. Ontiveros. I should be able to pronounce your name. I am Spanish.
That's
It's a pleasure to have you here. You were just telling me that you've never done a show like this. And I was just telling you it's an honor to have you and those like you coming on. I'm
thank
excited
you.
to get to know you and spontaneously in front of everybody. Um, so, how long have you been like this?
Like what?
This, like being in the atmosphere, in this light worker, starseed, disclosure, ascension. And when have you had awareness, or when did you start to have awareness that this world isn't what we were told it was?
I think I've always been extremely intuitive, but I didn't I didn't become fully aware of what I know now until 2016.
Mm. And did you have like something lead up to that?
So I have an extremely rare disease, and
Mm.
in 2016 I had a seizure and I died, and my consciousness popped outside of my body.
Wow, very cool.
And and I've only started discussing this in the last 2 weeks.
Congratulations and thank you for sharing the code because so many things that happen to us, they may not happen at the same time, but it's helpful to people to hear
Yeah,
this kind of stuff.
I agree.
So, what happened? I don't know what else to say but that because it sounds pretty good to me. Did you have, I mean, up to that point, you were already intuitive, or you were self aware that you were intuitive.
Yeah.
So, was it a big shock to you what happened? I guess it was.
Yes, it was a very big shock. So essentially, so I had a seizure, and I could feel it, and my consciousness, my being, popped outside of my body, and I went into a dark void. I call it the void, and I went into a dark void, and um, I was in a dark void for I don't know how long, for what seemed like an eternity, and there was a pinprick of light above me, and it was very far away, and the pinprick of light it called me, Todd. It called me. And the pinprick of light sucked me into it, and I went into a light with the being of light that I call the infinite creator. And it was really a remembering. It's not a thinking. It's a remembering, because essentially your body and your brain is a filter that creates a veil that filters information so that you don't get eaten by the lion. So I was in a light with a being of light, and I remembered everything, because you are everything. We are everything.
Yeah. Did you have a conversation, or was it all just absorbed, do you think, or activated?
It's not a conversation. It's more like a. So I did have a conversation, but I mean, honestly, Todd, well, we can talk about this, but I start talking in fortune cookies pretty quickly, because it's not the kind of language that
Right.
we understand in normal language. So I had a conversation. It's more like a telepathic type of energetic exchange between energies. And so the conversation that I had was, I remembered, oh yeah, I remember this. This is everything. I am everything. And the way I like to describe it is, I am a drop of water, and you are a drop of water. The being was a drop of water, and yet we are all the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And the question that I asked was, why do bad things happen? And I asked it, and as soon as I asked it, I knew the answer. And it's not like a second later or minutes later. It's more like, as soon as you ask, you know, because you are all of it. And again, I have to talk in a fortune, because it's the easiest way our minds can wrap our heads around it, which is, if you're white in a white room, how would you know white if you are white? The only way that you can know white is to know that which is not white, so that you can fully know white.
Mm-hmm.
White is love. That's it. White is love.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so beautiful and so loving and so profound and bright, and yet not bright. Powerful. And I had a conversation with someone that cuts my hair, and he had been hit by a car, and he died, and he was watching his body in the ambulance as they were taking him to the emergency room. And so I've since then I've gone and done some research on other people that have had near-death experiences, and I've only seen a few people talk about this one thing, which is the way it feels.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like love, but it's so much love it will make you cry, because it's so beautiful and so profound and so big. And so my hairdresser was saying, yeah, it feels like an orgasm. It feels like a release.
Mm.
And what he said, it cracked me up. It feels like a woman's orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was funny because he's a man, and yet he remembers what it was like to be a woman. It's different. It's bigger. It's more fuller, and yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, there's a.
It,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, it's just so big, and so afterwards, it was very hard because it's very depressing. This dark world that we live in, that isn't real, yet we think it's real, and it's not. We're essentially on the other side dreaming this experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a channel on YouTube I watch from time to time. I don't watch all the episodes. I just watch pieces of them. And it's all about NDEs. And I've had them. And you're right. The first thing you know is how it feels, right? It's like pure peace and love. It's just like, that's why nobody wants to come back. But, yeah, and so, to your point earlier, the episodes, I probably watched 15 or 20 of them. They all have a different story. They all have different, you might say, escorts. And some might be like more like yours, and some might be like Jesus or Buddha or, a grandmother. I've seen those. So, yeah, I think that's a really important part of, what you're saying, or a part of what that is that you can't explain is the feeling, right? I mean, and it feels, no pun intended, it feels like that same thing is what's coming in to the earth. Not to that extent and that immediate, but that the shoes aren't dropping around us anymore. It's like we're not nothing. It's like we're so used to something happening. Kind of like what you said when you went there and you said, "Why is there, bad things?" It's like the bad things, or the energy in the energetic field, seem to be dropping away, and of course that's given the human aspects, a challenge, and maybe that's the biggest part of it is trying to get used to it. So when you came out of this, because it's almost like a mini ascension or something, or or a download, or however you want to put it. But what was the impact on you? How was your life altered? How was your perspective or perspectives changed?
For the first 2 years, I was extremely psychic. It was very weird, scary, weird. It was, I could see kind of the walls be kind of like dots of energy. It didn't look real. It looked just like dots of energy. And I was also very sad, very depressed from being away from the light, being away from the feeling, even though I was still sort of over there for a while, but eventually it fades, because your brain, it's the way your brain processes information to basically keep you safe here. But it completely changed my perspective and changed everything about me. It's very hard because I own a professional services consulting firm, and I work around people that aren't aware of this, and I work with big companies, and I see a lot of darkness, I'm I'm around a lot of darkness, and so I created a set of tools so that I could stay in the light. And in the past month, I've finally um, created those tools and created videos to bring them to the market to help other people utilize these same set of tools based on what I experienced, so that people can be present, so that they can change their false beliefs, and live more in the moment
Right.
and tap into their true nature.
Do you feel like that? Okay, it sounds like. Do you feel like that you downloaded these this process or this book, courses, whatever it may be, and do you feel like that was your way of embodying it?
Yeah. So I don't actually know. It felt like I was over there for a long time, but it was really only a matter of minutes that I was gone. But while I was there, one, it felt like I knew that it was like a holding place. It
Mm,
was like a holding place before I then went into the next place, which would be like heaven. Um, but I wasn't allowed to stay.
mm-hmm.
And I remembered, so one, I had a life review, and I remembered what I created
Right.
and through my courses. And
Mm,
so I remembered in 2016 what I created in 2022. So time is like the stacking of dimensions
right.
on top of each other, and your DNA is essentially a radio receiver for the harmonic and or the vibration that you're tapping into. And so you can tap into different vibrations or different harmonics of you,
Right.
because you're multidimensional based on your focus and your consciousness.
Did you actively you know, pursue a connection with your future self? How did that, or did it just come in and you realize this is coming from my future self?
Yeah, I mean, I've I've looked at a lot of videos, and I've been following you for a while, Todd, and other people like you, and I know folks talk about downloads, and um, I don't. I mean, whether you want to call it a download or connecting to a different frequency, I think we're saying the same thing.
Or
Which,
remembering? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Which is you're essentially just connecting to a different aspect of yourself.
Right.
And so, I mean, in that moment, even though it was what seemed like an eternity, even though it was a few minutes here, I remembered many things, and I came back, and I was obsessed with quantum mechanics and entanglement and UFOs and spirits, and I had all sorts of spirits in my house. I still have spirits in my house, and I can hear them and feel them now, because I'm pretty open. My vibration is
Right.
open.
Do
And I
you?
mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the other thing is, it's. I was explaining to a friend of mine who is an engineer, and everything on the other side it's like a harmonic, or it has an energetic pattern to it, and one goes one way and the other one goes another way, and I could tell it was one was the divine feminine energy, and the other one was the divine masculine energy. And a girlfriend of mine who is an engineer, she told me that I was describing what's called a torsion field.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's mathematics and science are describing aspects of the face of God.
Right. Like the soul is you could say the one, and then it starts to be split, right? And you're saying like the next level, masculine, feminine, because I was going to ask you about that, and you telepathically already started answering it. But so like as the human aspect after the 2 years and continued to land, and you mentioned like it was gone or whatever, and a lot of people can relate to that. And again, this is so important for people that might be having that experience right now, right? Yeah. One way or the other. The rhythms are the same, right? But like as a woman with the life experience that you had up to that point, how did the whole experience and the time since then, how has it affected your perception of feminine, perception of masculine, male, female, your relationships? I would think in most cases, the primary, what do you want to say, friction in that torus field, right, is, because they're like this, right, would be the opposite gender. Has your view or your relationships with the masculine energy changed?
Well, so yeah, I mean that's the $1 million question, and it really relates to the work that I do, and it relates to the kind of material that I'm getting ready to put out. So the being of light, whom I could tell was the infinite creator, and I use the word infinite creator because God, Jesus, it's not big enough. It's right. It's not big enough. Literally, there is only one. There's only one thing for which we are a part of it, and everything is a part of it. There is nothing outside of it. There's just it. And the being of light was androgynous. Mm-hmm. And if you think about what's happening today and around gender identity, it makes sense why discussions around gender identity are changing, and people's identifications of pronouns are becoming more unified. And that's because we're raising our vibration to become one and to become closer to the one, which is both.
Yeah.
And, so how it has changed me is, so I'm actually a discrimination expert. I used to work for the Obama administration. I've written several federal civil rights laws.
Well, you're really coming out.
Yes, I am very much coming out.
Very much. And you didn't even change your name or nothing.
Nope. So I worked for the administration. I wrote several federal laws, and now I help my clients implement the programs that I worked on when I was a Fed. And so I work in discrimination. I help agencies and clients uncover their unconscious bias. Wow. And the thing that I remembered as a part of this is that I'm a woman of color, and I've experienced discrimination throughout my life. Throughout my life, I've experienced discrimination. And what I realized is that discrimination is real, and racism is real. But the experience gave me so much compassion for the individuals for whom are discriminating against me.
Mm.
And also, it gave me compassion for myself.
Mm.
Because the biggest thing that I experienced when I went through my life review was when you go through the life review, you experience all the other people that you have encountered as though you were them,
Right.
because they are you.
Right.
And you experience the pain that you have caused. You
Mm-hmm.
experience it as you are them because they are you. And so if you've ever hurt anyone, you will experience their pain. And the same with them, which is the person who has been the perpetrator against me will experience my pain. And why do they exhibit that behavior? They exhibit the behavior because of their false beliefs that lie in their unconscious mind that
Mm.
they're not aware of.
Well, so you're going into. I have an old corporate background, so I'm just like picturing this. Plus, I can tell by the energy you carry. Um, well, first, let me kind of set it up. So, Obama was out, what, 6 years ago? So, did you go into this private enterprise from that point? Or how long have you been
So,
in it?
so I left the administration in 2014,
Okay.
and my near-death experience was in 2016 after I left the administration. However, I've had my private business since 2014, and so I've been. Um, it's only in the last. So the first 2 years after my near-death experience, from 2016 to 2018, I normalized. I essentially came back into the body, Todd. I came back into the body, and then started doing the kind of work that I do, and it's been hard. It's been challenging, but this is what I'm supposed to do. And it took me several years to build the confidence, emotional confidence, to be ready to do what I'm getting ready to do now, which is to start teaching equity through mindfulness using spiritual practices to teach uh, individuals these concepts.
Now, this is on a personal basis, but also on a corporate basis. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
And
fascinating. That's
yeah.
fascinating.
And so my goal is, because what I'm seeing is, the way it's playing out right now is, there's the polarity, which is essentially the mirroring of our pain with each other. In which case, the conversation around race is is it's not helpful, because in some ways it's helpful because it's helping the individual see their own trauma, but that's only if they know the underlying spiritual aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is when I am traumatized as a person of color working with other individuals who may be exhibiting unconscious bias or even racist behavior to me. I have to understand from a spiritual perspective what is actually occurring, which is there is a spiritual gift that you are literally giving to yourself right in that moment as a result of being traumatized. And at the same time, the person who is acting in a way that is traumatizing you is a spiritual gift for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And which is what I'm trying to create are practices and techniques and tools to allow both individuals to come together to create harmony, compassion, non-judgmental forgiveness for themselves,
Right.
and then they can extend the hand of love to others.
Well, this is fascinating. There's so many things we could talk about. I have like millions of questions. I have a friend in Australia that comes on the
Mm.
show, Geraldine Grace, and she's an attorney. And
Mm.
she came on one time and she said, everyone's talking about leaving the 5D, I'm sorry, leaving the 3D to go to 5D or whatever. And she said, I'm embodying the 5D and I'm
That's
going
right.
into the trenches of the 3D
Right.
and I want to be part of the Reformation.
That's
Not that,
right.
and I was like, wow, that's really cool. And I feel the same thing with you. And obviously, I'm correct. But like having been, and I won't mention, I had before, but I won't mention the company names. But big companies, the biggest in their industry, in the industry that I was in, and totally, like the biggest one uh, was was the old school. I mean, there was one female um, at a senior executive level, let's say 14, 16 people up. She was the HR, which to me, you know, that's the best you can do. But and I was the only minority, and I guess demographically, and historically, you can kind of see that. But it wasn't the first company. I worked for a company in the late 80s and early 90s that was the biggest in the country for many years and in their
Mm.
industry. And I was told, don't hire any women
Mm.
and don't hire any African Americans. And I was the only minority. But, performance prevailed. But so I was able to see that. There was a couple of times that I received it firsthand, but by no means have I experienced what you have or most other people, especially women. Because it's one thing to be a woman, it's another thing to be a minority in a woman. Now, there's been a lot of changes, a lot of things thrown into the field, you would say, maybe since the Obama administration, one way or the other. I mean, I can look at the whole gender thing, and I can see, let's just say, the lesser gods programming, but I can also see your point. It's both. It's like the yin yang. My question is, one of my many questions is, I have to ask you this one first and then the second one. But I have a friend that works and has for years, since he got out of Harvard, best friend from childhood, that's worked in the administrations, many administrations, very high level, and but he's white and he's a man, and typical kind of scenario. But in your retrospect, how many people, if you took 100 people in the that you were familiar with in the Obama administration, and we could be talking about any administration, we could be talking about Biden's or Trump's or even, how many of those people out of 100 do you think would be open to the discussion that we're having today and these types of communities and topics?
I don't know the answer to that question. Um, I mean, whether they would privately, I think that's, I mean, that's another, I mean, that's another matter. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't know, Todd, but
But I mean, like, there's one thing to talk about it privately, and there's another thing to do what you're doing or Geraldine Grace is doing. I mean, to actually put yourself out there. It's almost like what you've incorporated into your business was kind of like a preliminary walking the plank to get ready what you're doing to get ready to do what you're doing now. Almost like it's
yeah,
phase two.
it is phase two of my
So
life. Yeah.
and so maybe it's you're one of the front runners, and Geraldine Grace is one of the front runners. Maybe that's the end of that question. But in terms of like your experience since 2016, as you've incorporated this into your business that you're not going to take to individuals, what's the reception been like from these entities that you work with? Have you seen any type of change that parallels what it seems to be an expanded awareness, particularly since COVID, as so
Yeah.
many people have gone to self-introspection and so on? But what's been the evolution of that? Were you well received from the get-go, or did they think you were crazy?
Well, so just to be clear, Todd, I said this at the beginning, but I have only just put this out in the past 2 weeks.
Okay. Are you talking about with the corporate 2 weeks?
No, with the corporate world, I've only put it out in the past 2 weeks, and I've only started speaking publicly about it in the past 2 weeks.
Okay.
And while a few very prominent leaders know this about me, I have not spoken about it publicly until now. You are my very first public speaking role on this topic.
Wow.
Very first. And but I think the response that I have gotten so far is indicative of what is to come. I haven't started promoting this on social media, but I'm going to in the next several weeks, which is this. So in my LinkedIn post, what I wrote the background for my promotional video that highlights Awakening Grace. And what it said was this, that I had a near-death experience that profoundly changed me. And as a result of that, it was very difficult working with my clients who oftentimes traumatized me after my near-death experience. And they traumatized me because I started wondering, why did they hire me? Okay, don't forget, Todd, even though I had that near-death experience, I still live in a body for which my body oftentimes makes me forget, and I'm in a story. Mm-hmm. I'm in the story called Amber Ontiveros, who is a Latina professional services, blah, blah, blah. And so sometimes we get stuck in our story, thinking that we are our story, and not remembering that I am a being of light, for which the spark of the infinite creator lies in me. And so I tell on my LinkedIn that, my clients oftentimes would traumatize me, and I would wonder, well, why did they hire me? They must not value me. I must not be valuable. And one day what happened was I was watching a video by a man who was so angry. He was so angry over Black Lives Matter. In that moment, it hit me. What he was saying was mirroring my own false belief. What he was really saying is, if Black Lives Matter, I don't matter. And that's not real. That is a false belief that he is believing about himself because the programming is replaying in his mind. And it is the same programming that is occurring in my own, which is, if I give these innovative tools to my clients and then they don't use them, it must be a reflection of me, and that's not real either. Mm-hmm. In this case, what my program and the set of tools are about is helping you understand the false beliefs that lie in our unconscious mind that aren't real. And when you remove those false beliefs and you implant positive ones, you can then become the best version of yourself. And I understand that everyone wants to leave the body and move into 5D, but 5D is here.
Right. That's the whole thing, right? I mean, it's we've shifted dimensions or shifted frequencies throughout our soul's lineage, but to do it in this dense environment,
exactly
right. This is
exactly.
And you coming from, both of my parents were lifelong civil service, Department of Interior, Department of Labor. So that's a real, growing up in the 60s, late 60s, as I was becoming conscious, and, they were both, working for the government and so on. That was something that, took on new meaning as time went by. And like I said, my best friend ended up going into the government, and obviously known other people. We all have, but and then going into the corporate world, you definitely can see the the matrix structure. Let's put it that way. And the government would seem to be the core of that. I guess at least in America, you might say, in
Right.
daily life, because it touches us, all of us. But having been in that arena and having the experience that you had with the NDE and so on, and from there, because it's continuing, obviously it's expanding, and you're having the courage that only the soul can have at this point in time to actually come out and do what you're doing. That's pretty amazing. What is your feeling on this same type of transformational energies that we talk about on this show and that this community really is all about, transformation? Do you see these things happening in that environment? Or maybe that was too far back. I mean, I guess you still have context within it. Are you picking up on any, let's just say, collective change as a group from, say, the people that you're, interacting with or, connected to? Are they feeling what's happening?
Yes. Yes. Um, yes. Oh, it's so much. People don't know. I mean, I think I've talked to other people who have similar spiritual beliefs as I do and as what you do, and they are everywhere. I mean, I have some colleagues that are engineers, that are mechanical engineers and structural engineers, and they have the similar beliefs. They don't talk about it, but now, as the consciousness has risen in vibration, we have little chats every now and then, and yeah. And the other thing is, it's funny because it's almost like what's happening is a story about a story about a story, and those people that aren't necessarily connected to this aren't talking about the story, but they know something is happening,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't quite put their finger on it. And but it is changing. It is absolutely changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think it's got to the point now where everybody's feeling it. Doesn't matter
Oh,
what communities you're in. I mean, everybody's feeling it. There's so
everybody's
much.
doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much talk, like, over the years and some of it's warranted. I mean, disclosure. I mean, this is the unveiling, which is the Greek definition of apocalypse. But like you gotta believe that whatever the narratives are, because again, they're just stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
That this whole thing that's really seemed to kick off with COVID in 2020, when people were regulated to really be in their own space, basically. That it's got to have a tremendous amount of momentum at this point. It really does.
Yeah, and I was so deeply touched because, I mean, and this is an example, Todd, of the change. So when I put out on my LinkedIn information about this, I was so incredibly grateful because I received so many positive comments from other people of color. And the thing that I was the most worried about was whether folks would be angry by me, because what I'm proposing is non-judgmental forgiveness for ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and for others. Because, Todd, we are all biased.
Of
We're
course.
all biased. We are all racist. We are all sexist. We are all of those things because of the collective conditioning and programming of the media, as well as other things that have happened in our life experiences. And I acknowledged that, and that through these tools, I've been able to see those false programming,
Mm-hmm.
heal myself and love myself and forgive myself. And that by forgiving myself, I can become the best version of myself. And then I can say, yeah, fuck that motherfucker who thinks what they think about me and believes that, exhibits racist or discriminatory behavior for me, because when I am full of my own love, I don't give a motherfucking shit what they think.
I love the new.
All that,
I love the new. I was the only one that cussed when
you
I started this show years ago. It's fun though.
know?
Yeah, yeah. So like that's the key. The key is if because awareness. I mean, it's such a huge field. And like you said, story on top of story on top of story. And I have this thing with myself. Why am I examining the superficial? What's beneath it? Like we all have our own ways of shadow work, shadow eating.
Yeah.
But the prejudice, when, like what you said, when the level of awareness for all that might encompass, in layman's terms, is we were all subjected to the same thing. And from that thing, all these stories occurred, which are not us. And at the end of the day, when you can say, because I think probably the easiest way for me to work through things, especially when they're sticky and grimy, is everybody was subjected to the same thing. I'm no different than anyone else. I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm a human being that's got a valiant soul at the core of it that chose to have this experience, and you start to respect it and revere it, and therefore yourself, and then it extrapolates to your relationships and how you look at other people. But how, in whatever terms, how do you get someone or a group, like if you're going into these corporate arenas, to look at their prejudices and biases? How do you get them to admit to that?
Well, so we don't utilize the same approaches that other consultants use, that they go in and they teach unconscious bias training, and that's not the approach that we use, because this is about self-discovery and compassion for oneself. And so it includes a technique called mindful listening. And I honestly, I believe when I do mindful listening, it's a form of channeling.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, it's a form of breath work where you focus on the breath. And what you're trying to do is, by being very aware and present, you can actually feel what's below the words that are being discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And so the tools that we teach are mindful listening, so that people can hear each other and regulate their emotions and manage themselves, so that they can then see what is the other person really saying.
Right.
And the other thing is, Todd, it's also about uncovering the other person's false belief.
Mm-hmm.
Because when emotion is arising, it's actually, the reason why the emotion is arising is because there is a conversation in the person's body and mind between their higher self and their ego. Mm-hmm. And what's actually happening is a spiritual gift, which is the ego and the higher self are arguing, and you're trying to discover what is the false belief that you have.
Right.
That's why in the courses I have there's a set of affirmation cards, and the affirmation card that applies here it's called suffering. Suffering is grace. Grace is suffering. Suffering is rising of a teacher. Because what's happening is you're teaching yourself as a result of that trauma. Right. That's the negative emotion is arising. And then by being aware of it, being present of it, you can see your own false belief about whatever this situation that's occurring. And in the same way, Todd, we start with the individual so that they can learn their own false beliefs, learn how to love themselves, reprogram their mind, And then they can apply those same tools to other people. And so, for example, Donald Trump is one of the most important presidents that we have ever had, in my opinion, and I am a civil rights expert. Why is he the most important person that we've ever had to advance race and equity? Because he was a very big soul that allowed us to see our darkness.
Mm-hmm.
He allowed us to see our pain. He allowed us to see the part of us that we didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
That required a very big soul. And I am grateful for that, because we saw what we didn't like within ourselves.
Yeah.
And in the same way, we have to have compassion for those. So in other words, I now have significant compassion for white men, white women who are angry over the conversation around racial equity. And they're angry because they believe if people of color advance or women advance, they won't. And that's not real. That's not real. It's an abundant life for which we can get anything. But the only way you can do that is if you reprogram your mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the awareness of what you said about the collective programming, because the truth is, I mean, we know that our playmates that are in whatever antagonistic role or controlling role they are in, even like with the woke culture or, perpetuating division, really perpetuating victim consciousness. So I think part of what you were saying about Trump is there's a lot of pieces to that, but the contrast that he uncovered, the fact that at some point in time, even if it's said obtrusively, even if it's said almost rudely, whatever the case is, it's that we've got to let it go. I'm here, you're here, how we got here has to become, it's those stories on the stories, right? And
Right.
and so that's a really big thing. And I really, having done a lot of presentations, in public speaking, like, in my corporate career, a lot of it was motivational related. I can just see you, like, going into this patriarchal structure with the passion, right? And the spiritual confidence and courage, because you have it. And because I was thinking, how's that going to look? But to walk into the room, I mean, I could just see it, like, okay, everybody, this isn't going to be what you thought. This is all about you. Like, you're immediately shifting it to them. Like,
It is.
forget
It's
about all
all
this out here. It's not about what the world's done to you. It's about what you are seeing.
Exactly.
And you know what I mean? Like, I can see where, because for a long time I think, okay, well, what's going to happen? All these structures are going to just, collapse, and we're going to be in, or is it going to be a reconstruction from the raw material that's there, which is really pure love in a distorted manner or in a distorted perception. And if there's 100 people looking at or participating in this field, there's 100 different perspectives. And the only perspective that's going to take us towards unity, let's just say, is going to be through the individual, right? Like,
Yes.
we're all the same. This isn't lip service, and we've seen the politics and we've seen the BS and all that. But it's really not Obama or Trump or anyone or America or a church or whatever going to do it for us. We have to do it. And so you're walking in there, which will be so powerful, to walk into a space that's been so imprinted, and to speak from, what looks to be one individual, but it's really, like you said, a channeled voice. It's our voice. It's you, me, we, and it, right? But it takes the human who has embodied that which they've received, because we're all doing it. So many people are downloaded specific things, right? specific modalities and so on and so on. But to be able to actually step up, be it on a show like this or in a room full of corporate executives, but to actually, that's the difference. And I think that's what's happening now, and that's why we put the call out. And I'm so happy that all of you are answering it, and I want to put it out more. and that is, it's so important for this part of us to be heard now.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is you're right. It's this. I don't go into conversations about vibration or spirit or something like that. I use techniques that they can understand.
Sure.
So, I teach mindful listening and breath work to regulate emotion, and it includes like a workbook that the individual can understand their own false beliefs, their own unconscious bias. And then it includes visualization techniques, which is really teaching manifestation. And it includes positive affirmations to reprogram your mind. And it includes affirmations. And the individual first has to learn them. And then we teach how to apply those same techniques in a team setting, where they then listen to racist scenarios, and then they play out those roles so that they can use the techniques to listen to each other and to create a space of compassion, non-judgment, and forgiveness.
You got to start somewhere.
Yes.
I mean, and then again, looking back, and this would have been the late 90s, early 2000s, there would be what I would say progressive, non-linear speakers or initiatives brought in, usually from the HR department. But they were as plastic as the plasticity that constructed the whole environment. And it was, I guess, really characteristic of that whole paradigm, in that things are done, it's like the flavor of the week kind of thing. But I think to see or even contemplate a person like you walking into a space, and the great thing about now is that this space, even this space right here, is going to be thousands of people. So we don't even have to be, but just the fact that somebody knows that, oh, she's like me, particularly women.
Yes.
She's like me, and she's got the guts. She's gone through what I've gone through, and now she's got the fortitude to actually put herself out there. And what I found so ironic is when you said, I put the post up on LinkedIn, and I was, because I've heard a lot of people say that, like, oh, when they first start coming out, like to put up a post and they start breaking down, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just put this post up and now my family's going to see it, whatever. But I thought it was ironic because you said, yeah, I was kind of worried about, what people would think. But at the same time, I was going, wow, but she's not. She's not worried about what people think. She's just going to do it.
Yeah, the ego was worried. But the soul was not. The soul knew. The soul knows. I know this is going to be extremely successful, and that's why I had to come back, because this is my calling. This is what I have to do. Right. And there are other people that are going to hear the call. They're just stepping into themselves.
Yeah, and when they see someone that they can relate to, because it'd be different. Like 5 years ago, we would have, like, because we didn't know, we were just getting started. We would have people on that had big platforms, and there was that whole separateness of inferiority, superiority. It's one or the other, right? But to have someone who's been through the fire, like all of us, and come out the other side and say, and that's how I feel about it. I feel like, okay, what are you going to do to me? Like, you can't kill me. I mean, this vehicle can be turned in, but so what's there to lose?
Yeah.
What's there to lose?
And now, so I even talk to my clients, which are agencies, public agencies, and we'll be in a meeting and I'll be like, there's a spirit right behind you. I can see it. And I mean, I'm opening up to, I finally have, I've integrated both parts of me, which is this, policy person and this spiritual side of me. And, my clients like it. And I mean, that's what we're supposed to do now is, we're supposed to be our becoming.
Right. Well, the truth frequency, that's, becoming more obvious every day. It doesn't matter, what you're talking about. The truth frequency just comes through. People just know it.
Yeah.
They just know it, and it's congealing. It's like it's increasing, and I can relate to what so much of what you're saying, and even talking to people over the years, where they get they heal themselves, they bring themselves into alignment, they expand themselves, they anchor, embody, whatever you want to call it, and in particular will have some idea of their purposes, and they will pursue that. And I hear them say a lot of the same things. One of them is, I know this is going to be successful. I know this is going to be global. And it's not an egoic thing. It's, again, kind of like your NDE.
To remembering.
A language, like it's a language that we can try to put in human language, but we can't. And what I get from it as I've popped in and out, is I've got my own downloads over the years about my purposes, has been we underestimate by not even like millennium, exponentials, the impact of our individual, seemingly minuscule motions and actions. So, for instance, as an example, let's say in the very near future, the first time you're going to step into this, to the guts, right, to the physical corporate. You got a big 50, execs in a auditorium or whatever, and you step up and you do this for the first time, and you pull it off, boom. That energetic impact, I believe, is what so many of us have tried to explain. Is we know this is going to be global. We know this is going to be successful. It is. It's just not through the linear means that we're accustomed to. It's new, and it's happening. So that's why I think it's so important, because it's not even so much the people that will go, oh, I'm a racist, or I'm biased, or I'm prejudiced, because we know that experience is the only teacher there is. You can talk to me till you're blue in the face. But what I think is the real payoff is where people see you being in your power, being yourself, which is such a, just to think, the most powerful thing we can do is just to be ourselves.
Yes.
Like there's no grind in that. But for people to see that, I believe, is the big payoff. Because the more people that step up, because we're all the same. We're all geniuses. We're all, beautiful artists, whatever you want to call it. But I really feel like that's the thing. Especially for people that are in an environment like you or my friend Geraldine, where you're actually not, it's one thing, and I'm not taking away from it, to step into a platform like this where it's supportive, you don't have to be embarrassed, and you have like-minded people, let's just say. But to walk into a place where you have the level of contrast that you would have in a situation like we're talking about that you're doing, that would be huge. So you may not get them all, but the ones you get, they're going to be hooked.
Yeah. Well, and I've started. I'm over the next, 5 months. I plan to go out and do public speaking and tell my story. And I've had one-on-one meetings with executives, heads of chambers of commerce, and they love it. I mean, how they will react in a public setting, that's something else, but it doesn't matter.
No, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
How they act around others will be their programming. How they react in private will be their true nature.
Yeah, but you're planting seeds. You're amber apple seed. You're amber. You're amber able seed. I don't know what we would
Yeah.
call it. Well, how would, but yeah, yeah. Well, I would highly encourage you to put any and all posts that you have, any into the Soulogy group. There's about 50,000 people in there, and it's always been very open. It's a very engaged community for information to get out there like this, and we're working on expanding the platform very soon, and that would be another great avenue. But yeah, I think this is amazing, and I just applaud you for it, and your
Thank you.
courage and your journey, and it's nice to be able to be in a field of consciousness like this with all these people, and you start looking at other people. We look at mirrors, and we don't want to look at mirrors because but that's your business. That's what you're doing, right? I mean, but to be able to look at people and go, oh wow, there's me, or there's my friend, there she is.
Right. Right.
That's pretty cool. You see the oneness, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very, very cool. Yeah, and I'd love to get you back on here to see how your progress is and what's happening, and that'll help you. Like maybe in 2 or 3 months, come back on. Hey, what's going on now? Where you at now? And because I think the other thing that really stands out is I'm seeing every day, especially since we kicked this back up about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, back to like 15 a week. There seems to be something different, and
Oh, there
and what it
is.
is, it's like people coming forth. Like you're a perfect example. Coming forth, which what for all intents and purposes is sacred wisdom, now being embodied and remixed into the human experience, but they're so human. They're not egoic. They're not full of themselves. They're humble. They're gifted. They're graceful. They're beautiful, and that's different to me. That's a bit
Mhm.
different now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's everywhere. Honestly, Todd, the energy has just been crazy. I've been having all sorts of Kundalini experiences, and I have like angels in my room, and it's crazy. It is crazy.
Well, we
So
definitely we definitely got to jump into this next time.
yeah,
We
yeah,
definitely
I'd
got to
love
do
that.
this. Yeah,
Can I leave you with one of my affirmations?
absolutely, absolutely.
Sow your seeds of love as but a gardener. Pluck out the seeds of hate.
Mm. I look forward to seeing what you come out with. It was a pleasure and it was an honor to be in your space today. And thank you. And I encourage
Thank you.
all of you who are out there and sitting on the fence, and we're just going to keep throwing these ambers out there at you until you get out here. But yeah, if you want to. But yeah, I don't mind the emails and the messages, and it's funny because I haven't been vetting things. We never really did a lot of vetting, but just if somebody was strictly promotion and marketing, we're like, hey, this probably isn't for you. But now I'm not even doing it. I'm just trusting, and because so many of them have written, "Oh, yeah, it's time for me to come out. But I'm just trusting it, and it's
Yeah.
working pretty good. So thank you
Thank
for.
you. Thank you, Todd. I'm so
Mhm.
grateful because, I think it would be appropriate that I would tell my story first on your program.
Mm.
I love that you focus on you do so much for the divine feminine and allowing the divine feminine to rise within your space. And I do follow other channels, but I wanted to reach out to you first because I think it's really cool what you're doing. So
Well,
thank you.
the divine feminine's done a lot for me. So, I work for the mother. I don't make any bones about it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is what's coming back though. And maybe the last time it was the other way around. Who cares? But right now it's and what it only makes sense. We talk about embodiment. It only
Yeah.
makes sense to get her own out here. Well, what represents her own, in the most expanded vibration of it, and that would be, I would imagine, 98% of the time it's going to be a female incarnate in this particular, what some might say is the last hoorah. But yeah, so yeah, y'all keep coming, and we'll keep supporting you to do it. And I'll see you in 2 or 3 months, and we'll do it again. Best of luck to
Okay.
you. All
Thank you.
blessings. Yeah, you take
Bye.
care.